Hello, y'all. Welcome in season 4, the LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast, the dynamics of women. And y'all know me. My name is LaGina Rae. I want to give a huge shout out to all my day one listeners. Thank you for rocking with me. Make sure you're dropping in the comments how you feel about this season, even if it's in comparison to the other 3 seasons, or you just have questions. Like my friends over there at Sisters Who Kill say, talk to me. I'll talk back. So make sure that you're out there and you're sharing everything going on. But I do want to say that I appreciate you so much. And as you know, we are here in Houston recording right here in my podcast studio in the historic Esperson building. And if you come to my launch party or if you hear over the time, I'm probably going to do just like a special episode on this building. Esperson has some really cool history. The building is actually 2 buildings, and it's called Esperson Buildings with an S because this building was built separately and is linked together. So there's that. And I want to shout out, of course, Esperson Flex and Camera Management for hosting our podcast this year and being some of our main sponsors, as well as Share Me Wine. You've seen it on the table every single episode. This isn't juice in a bottle. We are drinking here on set as we are talking and celebrating women and their journeys. So before we dive in a little bit more, I'm going to hand it over to my guest, and she is going to introduce yourself.
So happy to be here. Hello, my name is Marisol. I'm 45 years old. Jesus Christ.
Hey.
My zodiac sign is I'm a Gemini. Today I spent the morning with my family making fresh biscuits with my aunt and my family who I love and adore that live in Houston. And you are listening to LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast season 4, the dynamics of women.
Dynamics of women. I love that. All right. So I got to talk about how I know you because we have cool story. And this is a special episode to me because you are one of my dear friends. Like we are some road dogs for each other. And it just means so much. I'm excited because this season, our quad of people that we don't often advertise because it's not about that, where I've been able to interweave us all in this final season of my podcast. And it means so much. So I guarantee y'all no dry eyes for this episode. But we met virtually first, and we were working on a project, right?
I believe that was past Mike.
Yep.
And then Shermie's wedding.
Yeah,
and
Shermie's wedding is the first time I met you in
Shermie's
person.
wedding, which was kind of funny because I really feel like Shermie and Jasmine were like, LaGina and Marisol have to
meet.
sit together.
Yeah.
They need to like be in each other's space.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was like the start of something so beautiful and so amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So we did Share the Mic Now, Texas.
Yep.
And there was 5 of us that worked on that in tandem. And if people don't know, Share the Mic Now was all about this movement, realizing that 2 people could be in similar abilities to have influence and in similar levels of life, women particularly, and they weren't getting the same clout out there in the streets. The white woman was getting a lot more attention on especially her social media platforms. And the Black woman that may have been even saying the same message or something more impactful or whatever was not getting the same amount of traction, whether we say it's people or algorithms, which are people that did the algorithms and all that stuff. But on and on and on. And it basically came down to white women in similar fields or professions or influence were yielding their platforms for a day, a week to the Black woman that or a woman of color that has something to say. So calls to actions, attention to things that are going on, all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the project, they just basically did a mic drop and were like, now everybody else share the mic. And of course, I believe it was Jasmine and Shermie probably picked it up and then brought all of us in to do it. And then since then, it's been history. And I have to tell you that I appreciate you so much because you are a quiet person, But when you talk, it is loud as shit. It like vibrates a room in eardrums. It's just so beautiful. And of course, you love Mama Harris. We all love Mama Harris. Shout out, Mom. Hello.
We love you.
Yeah, she said hello, by the way. But just the way you move, it's beautiful. I like the 2 fucks that you give and the 30 fucks that you don't give. And you're legit making money and doing things in a really unique way, if that makes sense. So I appreciate your energy, your light. I appreciate you just opening up your world and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm ultimately like grateful for the beautiful friendship that I have with you. Um, I've been around the block a few more times, and I think I was louder in my earlier years,
Yeah.
right? But it was more this loud voice. But it was when you get a little bit older, there is more power in silence, right? When you truly step into your power, you don't have to whine and scream, right? You can move in power and it doesn't have to be those things. So those are the things that I've kind of learned in my own journey, to lean into my power, but it doesn't have to be loud and scream and stomp. It's kind of it's that dropping into that true femininity
Mm.
that is more powerful when you lean in and you just kind of own the queendom, so to say.
I love that. Ooh, okay. So before we dive in to everything, I want to play a game.
Okay.
It's called Let's Talk. Let's talk. Let's talk. Hey, y'all. I just want to give you the heads up. There is definitely cursing, adult content, and there will be triggers in this episode as we look at and celebrate the journeys and the walks of women. Okay, so let's talk for real. As we are ebbing and throwing through the world, there's a lot going on. And I want to make sure that this podcast is focused on all women in all walks of life and how we are growing, navigating, impacting the world that we live in, and have this really unique opportunity in the time and space we're in to tell our often untold stories and also the way we want to tell them, right? Like, it's not like, oh, this is great. Let me sit down and talk to you and make sure you hit these 4 points. We don't have to talk about that because it may make somebody uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable because I think in uncomfortability, like you're able to find new things out about yourself. And I always say, even when you sit down and have conversations with people and you don't agree with them, you're able to lock in on why you believe or feel some way that you do. Because if you never talk about it, sometimes it's just a theory. But when we talk specifically about women, there's so many things we go through that we push past or say it's not necessary to talk about because I'm busy and I need to keep moving. And I love the fact that in this podcast on this platform, the literal purpose of it is to tell our journey. Because the Rise of Woman is this story of loss and growth and triumphs and fabulous failures that are important to be told because things that happen to us should be viewed or happen around us or that we do to ourselves shouldn't always be viewed as like these badges of shame versus like badges of triumph. And I did that. So I just am enjoying this journey and I'm glad we get to sit down and talk. So let's just start with the basics. Who are you? Where are you from? How'd you grow up? What are those family dynamics?
So my name is Marisol Beltran. I'm a Dallas native.
Dallas.
Dallas. Born and raised. I was born and raised in the hood. Like, my grandparents came from humble beginnings, and I grew up with them. Product of an affair, and so my grandparents kind of, on my mom's side, really picked up the reins, because it left my mom very broken because she
Affair on
grew
your mom's side or dad's side?
so my dad was having an affair,
Mhm.
was married. My mom was young, wanted love, and so forth, right? As every individual does. And when he found out she was pregnant, of course, he didn't leave his wife. And so it left my mom really brokenhearted. So my grandparents picked up the reins. My mom moved in with my grandparents, and so I grew up very humble beginnings. My grandparents were Depression era. So the beauty in that, like there's always a beauty in the chaos, right? Is that I grew up with very strong work ethic from my grandparents because they were Depression era. My grandma was kind of outside of the box in that she invested. Believe it or not, I felt like she was kind of a pioneer in that. She taught me about good credit and
Mm.
things like that, like put me on credit cards before I would turn to 18.
Oh,
So by the
shit.
time
Okay.
I turned, by the time I bought my first car, I was actually able to do it on my own because my grandma had already laid the foundation for me. Um, so grew up there. But funny thing is, my mom always sent me out of the neighborhood to school. So I got the street smarts and kind of the book sparks, kind of outside of the box thinking from being exposed to different environments really early
Mm.
on. So went to performing arts high school where I majored in theater, um, and then went to business school. Which is kind of funny. And if you actually look at my resume, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I tried on different kind of jobs and there was themes. I was in sales, I was an executive assistant. I went through many iterations. They all involve people.
Yeah.
Problem solving was kind of my thing. But yeah, still in Dallas. I've traveled the world, but Dallas is definitely where my roots lie.
Dallas is the roots. So you talk about humble beginnings and your grandparents. Do you have any siblings that you know of? Are you close to them? Do you talk to your dad? Any of that?
That's a really interesting story within itself. So I had a friend in high school, post high school, who really felt that it was really important for me to see the other side of myself because I look like a giraffe compared to the rest of my family on my
Okay.
mom's side because I was built differently. My dad's 6'5". I found that out later. My
Okay.
mom's 5'1".
Oh, okay.
But I have a half sister. I've met her, I've met my father, but it was like a chapter in my life where I think that the universe kind of allowed me to see where I came from. And that was kind of the purpose of that. And then I went back to business as usual.
Mhm. Mhm. So what does your mom's side of the family look like?
Very indigenous,
Okay.
extremely indigenous, dark skin, dark olive skin, short in stature for the most part on that side. That's them in a nutshell, but ranging pretty dark skin in terms of like where I get the color of my skin is definitely
Your
from my
mom.
mom's side of the family. My father is fair, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Okay.
So, but I look like him, but I have the coloring of my father, of my
Yeah.
mom's side of the family,
Okay,
which is
yeah.
kind of funny.
That's how my niece is. My niece looks like my brother, but she has her mother's Viking skin. Like we're like the little black Viking, you know. And you've seen Jade Baby, so it's just
Yeah.
like, but looks exactly like Johnny. So it's just
Genetics are funny.
genetics are wild, and I think the more that as humans we evolve, because I talked about it on another episode, and I hope I put them in order now because I'm referring to it. But, I talk about, like, it's cool seeing in real time how we're evolving as humans. Even the COVID babies and, like, now their heads are up and they're moving and eating food, like, at younger ages. So it's super cool. You're in Dallas, humble beginnings, this performing arts school. So being an only child, if you will,
Mhm.
as far as where you grew up and everything, what does that look like? How is high school for you? Was it like High School Musical or Glee? Because you say performing arts, I just automatically think Glee, and I'm like, were y'all cheesy? Like, what's the vibe?
That's funny you say that, like, they're literally in our green room in the middle of the in the middle of school. It wasn't uncommon for, like, people to turn over, like, trash cans and start beating them like, lunch. Like, it wasn't uncommon for people to be singing and dancing
Like
and clearly.
Fame.
Yes, like, that was a real thing. It wasn't uncommon to see those things kind of going on all the time. Hence my, like, I love live music that has never gone away. I just get this, like, pure thrill
Yeah.
of people. Actually, I appreciate probably independent music more than I do, you know,
Mainstream and all that.
mainstream.
Yeah, the indie stuff,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love it. But yes, it very much was that type of environment. people doing monologues in the hallway. It was a real thing.
It was like real time thing. So what was your
My cluster?
what was your your cluster. What was your cluster?
This is probably not going to be any surprise to you, but theater
Okay, yeah.
was my major, and I should have actually done visual too, because if you know me, actually you do, you see that I'm always like dipping my hands in something creative. But theater was my major.
Okay. What roles? What was your thing?
I did the stage thing. I liked all aspects of it.
Okay.
I liked being on stage, but I also liked building sets and working with my hands and making costumes. I did a little theater work when I got out of high school, but I believe that the skills that I learned
Set you up for everything else.
set me up for everything else. And my mom would always ask me, "How did you go from theater school to being in the business world?" And I was like, "I perform every day." Right? I have the ability to like turn it off, walk in a room and do what I need to do
Yeah.
and then exit, because you have to. We all wear different personas no matter where we go.
100%. 100%. And it's funny. So theater in my family, the history of theater. So Zenobia, when we lived in Montgomery, Alabama, actually did dinner theater at the community college when she was in junior high, and would get some pretty solid roles, and had the haters either because she was young or she was Black or a woman, whatever. And so we went to dinner theaters in Montgomery, Alabama in the 90s. Pirates of Penzance,
One of my faves.
Sound of Music, all these things. And she did ballet, and she was actually on tow for a little while. And then Johnny, little brother, I think it was a joke. He may like watch this and be like, "You got it all wrong." But he and some of the soccer football guys, Heck, who was like the theater director, whatever they call it at the school, got them to build the sets. It was genius. Like, why not get all these boys to like build these sets? So my brother got in a theater through that. The random thing is my original theater debut that I remember, I was going to be one of the little pigs in Three Little Pigs when I was young. And I just remember running off stage. I had stage fright.
Stage fright.
Oh, I was so shy. And up until probably maybe a year and a half ago, I believe it's around time Zenobia passed, and my two fucks were just like, whatever, I don't care. I used to like black out when I would talk on stage. I would do it and everyone's like, "It's so great." And I'm like, "I don't know what I said," and all that kind of stuff. So I have definitely had a journey in that public thing. But, now it's over the past couple months, several people have been like, "You need to act. You need to be on stage. You could be a one stage something." So I think that's very interesting. And I'm not surprised that that was your thing. So high school was just this theatrical movement. Did anything happen that really stuck out to you and changed to where you were going to go, or was it a walkthrough?
I had a lot of fun in high school.
Yeah.
I had a whole lot of fun. I had a lot of friends, different friend groups, because there was different kind of cliques, even in high school and art school. While we were small, like there was probably a little over 100 in our graduating class.
Okay.
It was a very small class, but there were still cliques within that. I like to hang out with everyone, just much like I am today. I'm kind of a chameleon and kind of mesh through groups. I just kind of breezed through high school. One of my biggest regrets, though, was not leaving for college. I stayed in town. And I think that my family put a lot of fear into me about staying behind, right? There goes cultural things of like, we need you home kind of thing.
Yeah. I hear that a lot especially like from young Hispanic women, Latinas that are like, "Yeah, my family didn't want me to go far."
Yeah. Or I remember I did 2 years in community college and then got my associates and went on, and I did a couple of different stints. I'd say the tour to colleges.
The stints.
And I remember when my first semester out of the house, I was at TWU. My grandmother would call my dorm room to make sure I was in my room. And would blow my phone up. Like landline were a bitch. And I felt guilty. Like, and really, like I carried the highest GPA when I lived but my grandmother had this fucking fear within me that I was scared to leave.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I stayed there 1 year and then I felt so guilty. I came back home because my grandmother made me feel like this utter guilt.
Yeah.
So I chose a couple more schools. I went to UNT. And then I ended up at UTD in Richardson. I got a job out there. And how many months? So we started in August. September, I found out this was my junior year at this point. I found out I was expecting Jonathan, my oldest son.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm trying to finish school at this point in time. But I actually never stopped going to school. Once there's something about the universe kind of knowing what you need at a certain time. And I don't ever think that the universe ever creates any accidents. I think that was like the shift that I needed at that point in time to really get me focused.
As a kid.
As him. Like he became my focus. And I actually finished out that semester. I carried a really high GPA that semester. I went into labor early, called my professors. I was like, I'm getting ready to have a baby. And they were like, you're good. Like you had a solid semester and there came Jay. And so took the summer off and then I went back and I finished out. But he became my driving force, like for everything. I felt like God knew I needed him. And he really kind of shifted how things in life happened for me.
Yeah. I always find it interesting when I'll say women because women are the ones that have the children or whatever, but the breeze over the other human. So who's this other human? Does he come into play? Does he disappear?
His dad?
Yeah.
Funny story. He breezed in and breezed right out. I actually left him when I was 5 months pregnant with Jonathan because he had some drug problems that he just would not let. And as soon as we found out we were expecting, I was like, kid.
Okay, we got to clean it up.
Kid, what are you doing? And he was like, hey, like, you can't really dictate what I do. And I said, okay, you sure? And he said, yeah, like, I'm sure. And I said, okay, well then I guess I'm going to do this solo. And so I knew really early on, like, that I was going to do it solo, like 5 months into my pregnancy. But I also said, like, I'm going to make sure. And I asked the universe that moment, like, if this person is not going to be a part of the journey, please, like along the way, help guide my steps, help guide his steps. And I promise you that all along the way, like the right people who have mentored him have always shown up on time for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So how old is he now?
He's 21.
21.
He's 21.
Wow.
And he is like, if I could say perfect kid, like he is one of the most amazing individuals you will ever meet. Kind-hearted, a hard worker. Like he works in the service industry now. Wine connoisseur at 21. He started
for his auntie, he's gonna go work for his auntie's brand soon.
I'm serious. Yeah. Like he loves wine. But just a great all-around kid. Like if I was like the luckiness, how lucky I got, like that go around when I did it solo. It was a breeze pretty much with him.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you have a kid 5 months in, you're like, no, bro, this can't be part of the story, the journey. So what happened next after you break up? You have your baby, the grades are good. Where do you go?
I finished school. I was working for a mom and pop shop at that time. And then I went into corporate America.
Ugh. Okay.
You say that, but like,
oh yeah, you like corporate, don't you?
I like the things that I learned from corporate.
Got it.
So I go back to like nothing is ever an accident, right? So I get hired on by this like badass fucking executive woman. She chose me over somebody who had like 30 years of experience. I was like fresh out of college, and she chose me over her.
Why do you think?
She told me that she just knew there was something in me. And she allowed me, it was more than an EA role. It was so much more than that. Project management skills. I worked for a big bank. project management. She was the head of the central banking group for this big organization. She allowed me to work on projects. Like, as I gained her trust,
Mhm.
she would let me take on projects. Like, before I came on, she had never traveled outside of the country. She got to the point where she would leave the country and she would tell me, LaGina, she'd be like, "Hey," she called me Minnie, like Mini Me. She said, "Hey, Minnie, I'm gonna leave the country. Just make sure any decisions that you make while I'm gone, that I understand the decisions that I make." Like, she would give me
The company.
the company to make decisions on her behalf while she would go out of the country. I was in my mid-20s at the time. But I learned a lot from her, right? Because she gave me kind of it was like one of those things where as I learned, she kinda loosened the reins, she loosened the
Mhm,
reins, she would
mhm.
loosen the reins. She gave me the ability to kind of grow. She let me manage big projects. So I managed a really big project, like when they really started to focus on expanding, focus to really reach the Hispanic population in regards to their banks that were going. She let me figure that out. I worked with like the Texas CEO to work on that strategy. I'm like in my mid-20s at this point in time. But she kind of gave me the reins to do some of those things. And I
Mhm.
felt like I learned so much from her. Now, I was hot-headed at the time. So I would do stuff that was kind of like would drive her insane because I was like I talked about that yelling and
Mhm,
screaming
mhm.
earlier on. Like, I didn't know how to control some of those things. I know I had power per se, but I didn't know how to control those things, if that makes
It
sense.
does because when I feel like when I was in my 20s, um, I I would yell and scream. Sometimes it'd be in my head, but it was this this feeling of not being heard. And at the time, I felt like if I spoke louder or I said it louder or more abruptly, um, it would be heard, right?
Mhm.
And some of that is also the demonization of just who I am and what I look like is a black woman. Oh, aggressive, loud, and all that stuff. And then I really like sat down with it and I understand that the brevity and the power and the strength of sometimes what I speak is literally from the root and the ancestors. And it's natural. It's not me being loud, it's passion and all of these things. But then I have the discernment now to also realize that sometimes I just don't need to say it. And the look can change the thing, and the volume can be the silence, and all those things. And it's fun seeing that when you're silent sometimes or you say nothing, people have more time to process. And also, the avenue opens up for them to say and understand what you're not saying.
Absolutely. I'd like to kind of come back to something you said, right? You
Mhm.
talked about your ancestors, like this speaking from your gut or speaking authentically, because I think that's evolved over time for me, right?
Mhm.
Because there was a time where I felt like I had to change a part of who I was
Mm.
or assimilate per se, or look a certain way, or maybe not wear red lipstick to work, or maybe not, I would get in trouble for kind of pushing the boundary early in my career. Um, and how I did some of those things for so long. And then how over time you go like, that's just who I am. And I'm okay bringing all of myself to work into the environment, um, and not being afraid of my authentic voice,
Yeah.
right?
And how powerful is it when you think about just what you said around the color of a lipstick, right? When you're thinking about the power moves you're making, the decisions you're making, and run a company and all these things, and being the mini to this woman that gives you this opportunity, and there's still the the thoughts that have to go to a fucking lip color, right? That is one of those things that really plays into, like, the dynamics of women, honestly. It really does, and when I think about that, it's just mind-blowing. So you are with this amazing CEO, you're in corporate, and it's funny because as I'm like, for corporate, I've honestly never been in corporate. I've been in the nonprofit world. It's weird because all the jobs I've had, I've been in nonprofit and higher ed and in the service industry.
Mm.
So, and I didn't even realize I hadn't been in corporate until I was talking to somebody and I was like, oh, I mean, well, that was a nonprofit. And then even the chambers, nonprofits. So on and
Mhm.
on and on. So what'd you do? What was the next transition in life?
So that executive moved out of the state. She moved to Florida. She actually
Mm.
moved to Miami. She asked me to move with her. And I was like, here's this woman who's going to go live in a high rise in Miami. I'm going to go live in a cardboard box. I was making like a tenth of what she was making annually. My son was little at the time. And I was like, what am I going to do? But I had fostered a bunch of relationships with her peers while I had been kind of sitting in that seat. So I literally like set up meetings like with all of these essentially heads of the bank. And I was like, hey, where do you think I fit into your organization? Hey, where do you think I may fit into your organization?
Hmm.
I'm no longer wanting to be an EA. Like, I'm kind of tired of this. I've seen how the bank runs from basically the top down. So my ability to kind of read financials and those skills that I kind of obtained at that time, like I could see things differently because of the role I had had. And so I had all these conversations and then I ended up going into sales.
Hmm.
Killed it for a few years, loved it, but I worked at the retail level in the bank branch, and I
Mm-hmm.
was doing really well for myself. And then I was working Saturdays. I had a small child. Like, I hated working Saturdays. I was missing my son's swim meets. Like, there was something about that I just didn't want to miss anymore. So, somebody called me that used to work at the bank I worked at, and they said, "Hey, we have an opening on our team for a recruiter. You're great at talking to people. You're great at sales. Come interview with my manager." And I was like, okay, so what am I going to be doing? So I just kind of morphed my story and was able to sell myself on going into HR. Um, and so I stayed in HR and actually until I left corporate in January. So
Yeah.
I went through recruitment and then I moved up and I ended up, the last stint was with a technology company in the insurance world. And I managed a global team onshore and offshore out in India and then here in the US. And so here we are today. I know that sounds like,
No, I mean, for me, all those things make sense because I even remember when I started, moving to Houston, and I say start because I feel like I'm 90% in Houston and 10% still in Austin because of all the ties I had there. But I remember, getting the advice to remove certain things off of my resume, because of my interesting journey through my careers. And I understand it now to be one of those things that they were removed for a moment so people could understand the power of who I am as a businesswoman. But
right.
now they just play into every strength. I think it was actually Daryl. I was talking to him after the radio show one day, and he was like, "Yeah, but everything you did at the bar is preparing you
For
for
who you are
who
today.
I am now."
Yeah.
And even how I receive information and the ability for people to just tell me things and my not lack of caring and empathy, but my lack of reaction, like, "What?" Or, because I'm just like, "Oh, okay, cool, cool. I like that. That's cool. I want to know more." And just probing into it. And in that light, I have to ask you, because you talk a lot about the universe. And I'm a universe person too, right? Very much I'm where I was born and the vagina I came out of, I'm born into Christianity.
Right.
So I'm a Christian. I believe in God, but more essentially, I understand that over all religions, it's a higher power that everybody's looking at, all of these things. The universe plays a lot in my world, but we still have those moments where we fuck up and we're like, shit.
Right.
Yeah, it happened for a reason, but so what's one of those horrible decisions you made that may now have manifested into this great thing, but at the time and even looking back, you're like, "Yep, that was some dumb shit."
I would say first go round, making a better decision on who I decided to procreate with first go round.
Girl, that could be its own podcast
in itself, right?
Who we procreate with.
Right. Because you don't think about, I wasn't thinking about everything else to follow at that time.
Mm.
I would say the second big one came last year as I was kind of really discovering myself and working through some my own internal beliefs. As I started a business with someone who I really thought had their shit together because the appearance on the exterior was that person had their shit together. And I got in real quick and was ready to rock and roll. And it was it wasn't what I signed up for. And I had to exit out of it just as fast as I got in. And I'm glad that I did. But that was one of those really quick learnings of, okay, you need to really be, especially when it comes to business, sometimes you can not always lead with your heart. Sometimes you got to take that off and be able to look at it. You got to look at things from a business perspective.
Yeah.
So that was a big learning, but that was the biggest learning I got out of it. And then the second thing was that I can do it solo. I can do it solo.
Do what solo?
Run a business by myself.
Oh, yeah.
I run a business by myself. I had some weird stories playing in the background of that I needed a man to do it alongside me. But that was something that I worked through and realized after I unwound it. I was why did I do this? And why was I so quickly to be okay with doing X, Y, and Z? And then I had to it helped me to work through that piece. It illuminated a piece of story that I needed to clear out. So it was a gift in that aspect.
Yeah. In retrospect and hindsight and all that stuff. And I always, when I'm talking about business and when you think about investors and co-founders and all that kind of stuff, I tell people, long relationship for me is 3 months. It's fine. I am who I am in this lifetime. And I do very much feel because you can have multiple soulmates. And one of my soulmates that I've been with in several lifetimes, we have found each other in this lifetime. It looks way different. And most of the time I don't understand it, but I'm so happy that it's one of those things. But I talk about that in parallel to business, because in business, I don't like that business is your baby, because I feel like that's very given to women by men. Oh, your baby. So is it your baby too, bitch? But anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But I talk about just the consideration of who you're getting in a relationship with in business.
It's I had a friend of mine that's she's a CPA, and you know what the turning point was? That funny you say that. Is we were getting ready to do something along with this CPA, and she basically interviewed me. She was like, I'm going to do a session. I'm going to interview her, and I'm going to interview the both of you. And funny enough, she said something to me that she goes, Marisol, this is like a marriage, and unwinding a partnership is like getting a divorce.
It's difficult.
And so you need to understand. And then when I sat, and there were some red flags that were coming up, I was like, oh shit.
Yes.
Yeah, very quickly.
It's very quickly. And it's interesting enough because I feel very guided and blessed in business as far as mentors and sponsors and even my co-founder. But amongst my 3 businesses, my brand will always be my brand. It'll be 100% always owned by me. And I say that with a lot of confidence.
You should.
The us space, I'm very sure that the primary people other than me that own it will be founding members that invest in that. And then I'm very sure with Melanin Minds would not exist unless I had a co-founder, and the co-founder that I have, Mel. Because honestly, we say it in a different way, but the flat way of saying it is we didn't want this shit. We didn't want it. We didn't want the nonprofit. We were doing a thing between both of our businesses, and all of a sudden
it was birthed.
It was birthed as our baby, right? Or whatever, but it stuck.
Right.
And it stuck so hard, we won a national award by a billionaire, Riri, before we even were a nonprofit status and before we even understood everything we were and everything that happens. It's like we'll be in the conversation and say it, and then it becomes the thing. Like our values, which are grace and gratitude,
Mm.
that came from a conversation right before our conference last year. And we both had attitudes, and we were like, we can't show up like this to this conference where we're doing holistic mental health. And we were like, we need to operate in grace and gratitude. That's how it comes about. And so I love that you talk about that reality of a dynamic that we really have to go through. And then your mental dexterity of understanding, maybe not on the deepest level at the beginning, but why do you feel like the answer is the man, especially in business?
Well, and I think that goes through I mean, there's so many reasons behind that, but I think we're conditioned as women, right? Think about how like when were we able to get our own bank account?
I think it was the 60s or something or 70s that like
When were we
legit.
able to get our own mortgage? Like, those things have not been, like, realities for us for very long. What was imprinted in you? Remember, I was brought up by my grandparents, like, while it was cool I got my own house, my first house, they were really praising my cousin who shortly got married after that, and we literally within months, we got the house. I graduated from college first, but it was more like, "Bravo, bravo for him," and it was like, "Great, good job." Like,
For you.
for me,
Yeah.
it was this very different vibe. So it doesn't surprise me that some of that
Rubs off. It doesn't
rubs
surprise me
off.
either. I feel lucky because I was raised by my dad, and I don't say that like, we know mom was there. But as far as like I'm thugged out like I was raised by a man because I was, and I've discovered femininity on this backwards way, even through my mother. And she even discovers femininity as she has exited the military and gotten
Mm.
to do different things like that. So how do you define your femininity and all of this stuff where it was depicted to you in a very I'll use all the Latino terms like the machismo thing, and the Latina has to be this and do this, and the boys are, yes, he got an A, and the girls like, you better have gotten an A. Make sure that you go do this. And as you're moving through the business world and you're thinking about the red lipstick because you don't want to be inviting. And you know what they used to say? The red lipstick meant you're the whore, the bigger the
Yeah.
hoops, the bigger the hoe, all these things
Mhm.
that even were told to me. And I very much have had the opportunity my whole life to push back on and be like, nah, that's bullshit. But like, how do you define your femininity? How do you hold on to that throughout your lifetime?
So I think it's shifted and evolved over time. Today, if you ask me, it's more like I feel like I'm a fucking goddess. Like, it's okay to, like, own my power in a different way. It's okay to be financially independent. It's okay to be all of those things. It's okay to own my own money. It's okay to have these things on my own. I don't have to rely on anybody else. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way to my partner by any
Right.
means. It's more like it's okay. Like, it's the goddess warrior kind of vibe, versus me being waiting for someone to take care of me
Hmm.
type of thing. It's the power in the quietness. It's the power in um Luna Ray acting up and me
Wait,
going,
Luna's middle name is Ray?
"You didn't know that?"
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Luna Ray,
A,
as
I mean,
RAE.
A-E?
Yep.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, Luna's gonna love me too.
But, like, it's okay being, "Hey, I just asked you to stop doing that. I just asked you to do this." So the femininity piece, right? It's owning that queen. I go back to the queendom, right? The queen is not going to necessarily always be yelling off with her head, but when the queen walks in,
They're like, "Oh, shit.
oh
She
shit,
can get your
sh-
head chopped
chopped off. But
off."
she's, she holds her head high. She knows her power. and she exerts it when she needs to.
Hmm.
That is a place today. Like, I have removed all the labels of anything that I feel like my family, the persona I needed to be for my family. That has really shifted and evolved. Like, I give two fucks now about what I remember
Yeah.
when I fired my full-time job and went to see my family, and I was like, my grandma was having a hard time remembering. She was like, "Oh, well, you have to work." And I said, I don't work anymore. Remember? I'm retired. Oh, must be nice. Oh, it must be nice. And it used to kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I sleep in if I want to. I could get to do whatever I want because it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's my life and
Yeah.
it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you said something about a partner, and then we have Miss LaRae,
Yes.
who runs the world. So you go from the corporate, and you also said something about firing your job. So kind of touch on where all this stuff starts piecing together, the firing of the job, the partner, all of those things.
Partner showed up. He was a friend of mine. I met in 2008
Okay.
when I still worked at the bank.
Okay.
We have a funny story. I was working in the commercial line, helping a teller, and he pulled up to make a commercial drop. I was literally showing a teller how to look for opportunities in the system. Like, hey, when a commercial client comes in, here's some things to look for. Here's some probing questions you could ask. Drove up, he made a deposit, drives off. We broke for our morning meeting, and the teller she was like, the guy that just went through the teller line, he's on the phone. He wants to talk to you. And I was like, what? So I picked up the phone, and it's my current husband. But that was in '08, and we stayed friends for a number of years because I was living my best life at that time, and I wasn't looking for anything serious at the time. And then back in 2015, he called me up one night and was like, "Hey, let's go grab a beer." It was right after the first of the year, and I was like, "Okay, sure." But I'd never took him serious before that time.
Right. Just
We were
hanging out.
friends. We were hanging out. I'd meet him at a bar. Or him and his friends. So him and I had some mutual friends. And he was serious when he showed up that night. He was like, "Do you ever want to get married? Do you ever want to have children?" Like, these are the things that a woman normally asks, that is looking to settle down.
Except for when men make that decision, then they want to know that shit.
Well, and apparently I was like, I always knew I wanted another baby. And I was like, this is really weird.
How old was your son at the time?
Jonathan was in junior high at the time.
Oh, really? Okay. And
Junior high.
okay.
And I was like, yeah, I've always kind of wanted another one. So that happened that unfolded super fast.
Mhm.
And I think we were living together 3 or 4 months in, and it just moved really fast. And then always say that we manifested Luna. We knew we wanted a girl. We knew we were going to name her Luna. Exactly how we pictured her. She is all of that. No
Yeah.
lie to you. I remember one morning when I was pregnant getting dressed, and I could see a vision of her when I was looking in the mirror. I knew what she was gonna look like. I know it sounds kind of bizarre.
No, it doesn't. No,
but I could see her.
Yeah, you could see her.
I could see her, and she is
Y'all were assigning old soul, by the way.
Yes.
Y'all were assigning old soul.
She very much
that
is.
Little fucker's been down here a couple times.
At least.
Because she'd be looking at you I'm like, oh.
She has a whole conversation. I definitely think she's been here a couple of times. And it's funny. I had a spiritual teacher at the time when I was pregnant with her. And she was like, I can't even tell the sex of this baby because her throat chakra, she said the throat chakra is illuminating so brightly with the baby that you're carrying that I can't even see this. I can't see if it's a boy or a girl. Because, and if LaRae has a really big voice and has a lot to say, but early on I knew that was kind of going to be that. But so Ray shows up, I kind of settled down at that point in time, after we got together, and kind of everything kind of started kind of falling together per se.
Mm-hmm.
We have LaRae. I was in a sales job at the time, traveling a whole lot. And then I remember pivotal moment where he sent me a text of her walking. First walks, and I was on the
Oh,
road.
that's it. That's
And
it,
I
y'all.
said, "Okay, I'm gonna get off the road." So, got off the road, started working from home, and that kind of really started shifting kind of things for me of, like, really understanding being present with my family,
Mm,
where I had, like was always trying to prove myself. Because remember I told you, like, at home, growing up, my grandmother kinda was, like, clapping for my cousin all the time. I had a cousin that was 9 months younger than me, and for me, I felt like I was always in this rat race trying to go, like, prove my worth per se, like, working really hard, all these accolades, consistently winning awards. I was winning trips all over the world, like,
all the
all the
things.
things were going on, but it really was this whole thing about being enough, right?
Mm,
Being seen and heard, because at the core of everyone, all we want what?
is to be seen,
Mm,
found, heard, and understood.
exactly.
The us space.
But that's what everybody
Yeah,
wants, and at
yeah.
that point, I was working so hard to be those things, which is actually I was way in my masculine energy, if you know about masculine and feminine energy, right? It was like that it was out of balance. So, right, I started realizing even the podcasts I was listening to were way, like, super masculine dominated, how I
Mhm,
operated at home. Like, it was me when I started working from home, when I started recognizing, like, how much I was in my masculine energy,
mhm,
because that's what I kind of, like, trying to win the race,
mm.
trying to. But anyways, I become more present with my family, and then fast forward pandemic, rolling into the pandemic, I started getting kind of curious, right? So now I've worked for this executive, I've been around people with money, I've done all these things, right, throughout my career. But one thing I'll tell you is that we, women of color, men of color, like, we're not always offered a seat at the table,
Mm,
right? In
right,
terms of, like, learning how to invest, somebody calling you and say, "I've got this great investment opportunity."
right,
That's not our reality 9 out of 10 times, right? We're told to go get a 9 to 5. We're
right.
told to go get a real job. We're
Or we
told
understand to keep your head down so that you can move up without too many people noticing
don't
too
even
much.
ask for more money. They'll
Yeah,
recognize your
all
hard
that.
work. Don't shake the boat. So I started getting, like, really fascinated. I was, like, at that point in time, watching people on Instagram. I got really fascinated, and I started learning about the stock market initially. And then I started training with a mentor out of Brisbane, Australia, that was in the digital asset space.
Where'd you find your mentor?
The woman that taught the stock market class,
Mhm,
she's actually out of Dallas. She's a Latina
mhm.
who she's got a really incredible story, but started following her, kind of saw her journey. She used to have a spiritual podcast, which was kind of interesting to see her kind of
Spiritual
evolution.
podcast, what does that look like?
She talked about spirituality and her spirituality journey. And
Oh,
then she all of a sudden kind of shifted and started talking about how she had made a lot of money in the stock market and then wanted to reach people of color in terms of teaching them how to invest. So I took her class.
mhm,
I was like, yeah, okay, I dig this. And then I started learning in the digital asset space.
mhm.
I'm not even sure where the woman showed up. I just know that obviously I was supposed to be a part of this woman's class. I studied with her for like 6 months. Another close friend of mine, she was taking the same class. She stayed on with her because she was really drawn to that.
And her energy and all that.
And then I found some other people kind of within that group that were doing more on the investment side, where they were investing money and their money was growing for them. And I was like, huh, this kind of reminds me of the bank. I kind of, like, really understand this space. This kind of, like, putting your money to work for you. So then I started, like, really getting into it. And where I only started out with stimulus money, that's how I kind of started my journey, was with
The
play money.
COVID
Yeah,
money?
stimulus money.
Wow, hold on, because let me tell you, the stimulus money during COVID, because I was so when I moved here to Houston, because podcast studios here.
Right,
When I moved to Houston, I was retired from bartending. I was not gonna do it anymore.
right,
But something told me to always keep my TABC because it's just a ace in the pocket to
right.
always have. And um, so I move here, I'm retired. One of the bar owners in Montrose finds out that I moved here. And I am the unicorn in the gay bar scene. I'm a black, hetero enough woman in this scene. I start as a shot girl and I end up being one of the managers and the high ringer on some pretty like epic historical nights, even like Stonewall night,
Wow.
in Austin, to the point where I'm traveling and receiving $100 gifts and all these things. Anyways, so I retire, air quotes. I don't know what retirement looks like for a bartender. He found out I was here, but my friend that was a bartender here is still would travel to see me. He was one of the first people that was a man of color from other bars that was like, she's my bartender here,
Right.
which is some cool stuff because he's an ace here in Houston. He's like, oh, we're looking for I know a bartender. He was like, she's here. And oh yeah, but she's retired. And he's like, she's not. Tell her to be at the bar at this time. We want her at the bar. So I end up working at this bar. COVID hits, and I move into being like, because at first, we all thought COVID was going to be a month or so. We're like, oh, it's fine,
Right.
all good. And I was getting my unemployment check and then the stimulus check, and I became a day trader for the stock market.
Okay.
I say day trader because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but I watched all these YouTube videos and I'd sit on the things in the stock markets and I'd move. I don't know what I was doing, but yeah, that's my investment story. I'm done.
So I left a piece out. So the whole reason I even took the stock class out was because I had a really good friend of mine who was a Wells Fargo manager at the Bank of America. I can't remember. He has switched institutions a couple of times. So he calls me basically with insider information, right as like the pandemic starts, because he was really good friends with a financial advisor. And he was like, hey, do you have any liquid money? We need to go in. And it was because the pandemic was started. He was like, hey, because this is going to happen, let's go in and buy. And it was one of the casinos. He was like, let's go in and buy. He said, I promise we'll make our money back, in a couple of months once everything, but it's getting ready to tank. What do you got? And so I was like, and then in my logical brain was like capital gains taxes, like the things I already know fundamentally. And I was like, who's going to cover the taxes? Like these are the things I'm thinking at the moment, not really thinking, because that time my mindset wasn't necessarily all the way there yet.
Yeah.
So that he ends up retiring, like straight up retiring, because he had liquidity. He cashed out of his 401k. He actually became a very successful and still living his best life. He's like 2 years older than me. But because of the skill set he learning how to understand day trading. Okay, so that's that, right? So I go and then I find these other investment opportunities. So I'm like really start to be drawn to that piece, whereas my friend was really drawn to the coin piece when we were doing it. And so I kind of went this way. She stayed on over here. I kind of went this direction. And I started with basically my stimulus check. And I was like, okay, well, this can't be like, if I'm going to play with any money, I was still gainfully employed at the time. Ray was working. So there was no reason that I really needed the money per se. Like we didn't really need the money.
Yeah. And see, in that stimulus check, what I find interesting about it, and as you're talking, it's kind of coming in my head, but I really think that this debt ceiling thing is a result of those stimulus checks, because what they thought was going to happen, and I say the government, white America, thought that they were going to hand all these stimulus checks to stimulate
the economy.
And they thought that the Black folks were going to go out and buy J's, and the Mexican folks were going to go out and whatever. But that's not what happened. They're like, oh shit, these people know about investing and saving money. And so what happened is that money didn't go back into the circulation.
I think some of it did, of course, right.
But not at the level that was
anticipated
assumed, because they thought giving all of us poor folks or middle-class America money was going to result in that stimulating the economy. And what it did is we paid what we needed. We got some cool shit. But a lot of people invested the money. A lot of the people of color
A lot of people started businesses during it. A lot of people, like, I think that there was a lot
paid for their LLCs, all that stuff.
A lot of people did make some really smart decisions in terms of with that stimulus money. So that's where it kind of started for me. look, I've fumbled along the way. I've learned. I've had some very expensive lessons.
What are some of them?
Not knowing how to discern through things, or kind of going, oh, this person's doing this, like shiny balls over here. Like, not everybody is discerning. Not all investments are made the same way. Some investments, people were just trying to make money over the people that were coming in behind them. Like all of the things.
The BlackBerry. I got caught up in that shit.
Like all of those things, but those were expensive lessons. And to this day, now, like, I'll sit on something. Now, through that, right, the people that I started to kind of surround myself with at the time, like, were people that were doing very well for themselves, right? And so I would say last year, this time, I was in Cancun with my investment social club, and I was seeing people living this lifestyle, like truly living this lifestyle. So, right. So I'll go back to the stimulus, but as I started seeing my money work for me, I have to admit that I was still working my 6-figure job. And so when it got to the point, every time I got a bonus, every time I got paid, I would invest before I paid everything else. Now everything was paid, though just the way I started to understand how money worked for me, looked, leverage, understanding credit, like all tax loopholes, like the wealth, like everything. I became
the wealth loopholes.
Right? I became obsessed with learning all those things. I would watch business owners, fellow business owners. I'm like, are you still bootstrapping? Why are you bootstrapping? What are you doing? Like, I'd be learning. I started learning all of these things, and I'm going like, but I recognize like the lack of education in our communities. There is a big deficiency in our communities, and we don't think long term, right? It's the popping bottles versus, man, if you could just take that money, put it to work for you, versus living in the moment. Pop bottles with profits, right?
Pop bottles of your friend's shit that you're going to invest in.
Or, hey, you like Jay's great. Do you own any stock?
Yeah.
What do you wear?
Yeah.
Louis Vuitton, great. Do you own stock in that?
Do you own the company?
Yeah. Like starting to pay attention to those things, right? Like understanding, like, okay, that $10,000 you need to make that next business decision, should you be doing that? Or can you go out and go get a line of credit? Oh, you think you can't do that? You can. You just like we have access to so much information.
Yeah,
now.
and I'm in. That's why people like you are in my world, because I keep having to have those shifts in the thought process of it. Because even in a family where there's generational wealth and knowledge and everything else, there's also the acknowledgement that those things came from people that had to keep their head down to make that shit work. And so now it's heads up, like, what's going on? Okay. Like, there's that thing. So you are a legit investor and do stock market and everything else. And I heard you say retirement.
Yep.
You're not 50 and you're retired. And I know, because you're my friend, you're bored. And me and our group right now, we fucking, y'all camera facing on this one. She be texting us and we're like, this retired motherfucker. Because like the shit she wants to talk about now, like we're like, nobody cares, we're working. So we're glad, because you're going to go and try to move back in the work thing. But talk about retirement and what that looks like and what you're doing, because you're young and you're retired. And it's just
so
fun.
What's funny is, like, I use that term very loosely, right? And I was talking to our mutual friend Jasmine the other night. I had dinner with her. And I was
Jasmine's on the podcast this season.
So I was like, the last 6 months have been like this really. So I fired my job in January. These last 6 months have been like this really time of discovery. I went through this whole thing of depression for a couple of months, like taking off my corporate identity. Like, who am I without that? Watching my friends who are still building things, and I'm looking at them like, what am I doing? Like, before I could tell you guys, hey, I just killed this at work. Now I'm like, what can I tell them? Outsiders sending you guys pictures when we're in Paris or at the pool or something that, like, I I felt irrelevant at some point. And then I
Yeah.
had to kind of like understand that I haven't really been retired. Ray is like always making fun of me because I've still picked up other things. I've learned how to create content. I've
A
mastered
lot of
I've
things.
mastered Canva. I've mastered writing content with AI. I have stepped up for my investment group with philanthropic arm as I'm the VP of the national like arm now. And so I've been running
No
that on the background.
idea.
Yeah. So I've been running that on the background. I help to kind of streamline some other things with that. I'm not ever really, but I've learned some new skills, right?
Which is interesting because I guess this is one of those moments that is like, let's walk the talk of what I'm always saying because in our light and in our friendship, like I've actually, the stuff you're saying on my, I don't know most of that stuff, right? It's been really interesting because our friendship has been surely based off of like this very deep spiritual cosmic like hippie type shit that we're really on. So all this stuff about you I have no idea and I'm like, well, what the fuck, this is my goddamn answer for some of the stuff I need for funding for businesses and stuff, which is really good. So even in text messages while we're winning all this stuff, we're just waiting for Marisol to answer back with some enlightening shit that we need to keep going. So the add value that you didn't feel like you had in the group in those moments was 100% there because we're like, well, I mean, the win is there, but we're waiting for the reply from Marisol. Okay, we're good. And so for you, it's very interesting for me to hear that you were having these moments because on our side, we're like, well, this bitch retired, she flies fuck, and we just waiting on the stamp and you may go forth. And don't forget to, you know what I mean? And so it's really interesting. And it goes back to what I say on all my platforms about check on the people that are strong. Check on the person that you think's okay. Share when you like something about somebody. Because even if you think you like it 10 times over, they don't know you like it unless you say you like it. And sometimes you have to scream it at somebody because they don't ingest compliments and love the first
The
time.
same time.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
But I think that this was more of an internal journey more
Uh-huh.
than it was. Even my son will tell you now we're, working in corporate and being everything to everyone and trying to be the perfect wife and trying to be the perfect mom to my kids. I was a bitch at home. Like, why lie? I was the biggest bitch sometimes. I was probably not the most affectionate person. Like
Mhm.
all of the things, like even when Ray would come home with like a very labor intensive day, I was looking at him like, when are you making dinner? So in our home, Ray loves to cook. That's not I don't want to say that wasn't my stronghold, but like that wasn't something I necessarily thought of as second nature. Jay knew when he was little, when I was a single mom, like he might eat cereal for dinner. Like that was that was common in our house. Ray expects so one of the things I've learned about myself is I like to cook. I love to show love that way, but I
Really?
didn't really realize that until like the last few
Was
months.
it like currently?
Like
Was
current.
it pushed back on like how you were raised and like almost the
So living with my mom and my grandma,
Mhm.
what my mom was going through at the time, my mom literally would just get up and come out and kind of forage through what my grandmother had prepared. I kind of watched that all of my grandma always took care. My grandma always made the meals for my grandma. So I learned to cook alongside my grandmother, but I don't know what it was. Maybe watching some portion of my mom. My mom was never married.
Mhm.
So maybe it was like some of the things I saw in my own home that kind of led to that wasn't something I really skip to now. Like I get up, I make meals for my kids, I cook, I cook for Ray. Like he may not always like because he's very traditional he's like, what are you gonna cook? Does it have Greek yogurt in it? Because if it does, I don't want to fucking want it. And I was like, just try it. But like those are things that in the
My
last
partner eyeballs me in the kitchen. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Get out.
get out.
Get out.
Get out. But, like, those are things that I realized that I didn't even realize I like to do, but, like, I've learned a different side of me. It's, like, given me the space to learn what I like, learn
Mhm.
what I like to do. What do I like doing with my time? So, learning those things, learning the things that are the tools that I've learned over the last few months have been kind of being able to figure who I am out Because, right, when you're in corporate America, when you are really kind of chasing survival
In the Matrix.
in the matrix, it's not necessarily doing things that you want to do,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, you're talking my language.
And you're not necessarily aligned
And you're
either.
not aligned. So when you're looking at love and money, right? Would you rather be crazy rich? And I'm talking money like Rihanna money, Oprah money. Like, would you rather be insanely rich, however you define it, money wise, not the heart? I'm rich. Or would you rather be deeply in love?
So money allots you opportunity.
Mm,
Money allots you freedom. Money allots you the ability to think and create. Once the problem of money is solved, everything else can flow. And I
mm,
don't know if you know this from an energetic perspective, but being wealthy and being rich and having a long, strong, intimate, the frequency actually is very similar in terms of money and love. I don't know if you knew that.
mm. Interesting. So your answer is
Money.
money, and that's why.
Money. I mean, look, the last 365 days, we've traveled more than ever. I've been able to give both of my kids, probably Luna more than Jonathan, just because sometimes he wants to work, make money.
Which is mama's
Cool.
answer.
Interesting. Mama's answer, right? Um, that has been one of the most amazing things in the last 365 days for me is those opportunities to just have experiences.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I always know we're aligned because I don't ask the question a lot, but I was going to ask. You sum up 365 days, and you've gotten to travel and enjoy retirement and enjoy your kids. Um, when you think about who you are and what you are doing right now,
Mhm.
how do you feel about yourself, your body, your sexual energies?
Funny you say that. I think as I've grown older, and I say this, I don't know what it is about 40. 40 like came this new level of confidence. And I was talking to just talking to Jasmine about this the other day. Like my weight has fluctuated over the years, like it is what it is, but the confidence of where I'm at now compared to where I was in my mid 20s when I was, a size 8, like it is so different. Like clothes why? Like, it is just this different I'll wear whatever the hell I want to
Hmm.
kind of it is just a different level, and so you talk about sexualities, like, those things too are aligned, right? If you don't feel confident in your own skin, how can you be confident from a sexuality perspective?
Mm.
Because if you don't love who you are, it's kind of hard to be confident, right? If you're sitting around like trying to cover a portion of your body or worried about a fold of skin that somebody might be
I'm like,
staring at.
fold up. Hold on, let me get the fat out. I'm like, shit, I gotta be naked. I cannot,
I hate
especially at my house. Like, I gotta be
I don't know how you
naked.
people do it in Houston, but like fuck even getting here. I had to change from what I was wearing originally because it was so
Houston, you are
hot.
wet when you're here.
Yes. I was like, fuck. I was like, it was so hot. But yeah, I think over the years, like
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, what am I gonna be like when I'm 50? I was like, because I feel like 40, starting at 40, shifted a whole thing. I remember 20s, 30s, always had a swimsuit cover up on. Now I wear two-piece. I don't give a fuck. Like, and I
You're just
and
moving out here.
I'm just grooving, living life. But you know what the beautiful thing is about that? Is that my daughter gets to see that, right? And my daughter, Ray always says, that's your baby because she'll run around the house naked and she doesn't care, right? And I don't ever want her to lose that. Now, Luna weighs all about 2 pounds. She's an itty bitty thing, but it's confidence, right? And I never want her to see me shaming myself.
Mm,
And I never want her to see me criticizing myself and not loving myself because
mm,
I don't want that ever to show up in her. I want her to love every aspect of who she is. The
mm.
biggest compliment that she said the other day, we were sitting on the couch and she was like, Ray was like, who do you think you're going to look like when you get older? She looks at me and she said, I'm going to look like my beautiful mommy. And I was like,
Done.
done.
That
She's
kind of shit,
like,
I'm like, I need 3 kids right now. Right now, just like boop, boop, boop. I always say I hope it's one and done. If I have kids, and I'm able to have them or whatever, I need it to just be 1 injection, 2 to 3 come out, and then I'll adopt from there, and we'll
No.
deal with it, and I'll be able to afford it because I do believe a nanny per child. Because
I agree.
yeah, especially at my age, and not even because I can't keep up, because I have waited, so I deserve to keep my life intact how it is, including breastfeeding. It can be done at night, and the wet nurse can
I
come
was
in
like
and
the wet
strap that
nurse.
shit on and do I have all these theories and have expressed them with my partner. If we make it to even
That
near
level.
that he knows, I'm like, I'm not playing, and we can add them for all your kids too. We'll have nannies for everybody.
But that's one thing in our culture is like
That is
has
supposed to
been
be bougie. No, that shit's good.
No, like in order to create that space. And that's another thing I'll tell you about my grandmother. Funny enough, we had a housekeeper growing up. We had a woman that came into our home
Yep.
and she was our neighbor. She came and washed our clothes, she ironed them, she cleaned our home. That was early on. So when Ray looks at
Same.
me like, "What? Housekeeper? What?"
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's
"I
bougie. Oh,
did.
you think no.
I had that growing up."
Yeah,
Like, that
I
was
had it growing up, and the funny thing is we were the maid's assistants. I'm like, my parents let us know this was for them, and it
and
was
not for
not for
you.
us. And so I learned how to like fold drawers and all this stuff, like and fold towels and everything. But it was really interesting. And I always talk about I'm not what you would traditionally call domestic, but I am resourceful and I can order the shit out of stuff. And I love cooking. Like people know me, I'm a very, very good cook.
Oh,
It's like a thing. I'm an excellent, and it's not like standard stuff. I'm like, I see it. I'm like, oh, I can make that, and I'll go make it. It's super cool. I just did it, last night.
why didn't
Tuscan
I get the
shrimp and
invite?
everything else. You're with the familia. You're gonna
It
be here a
doesn't
couple
matter.
days. We're gonna do something. Chill out. Chill out. So you talked about the things that you're liking about yourself. Now, on the flip side of that, there's the things I'm not even sure, especially with a woman like you, it's not that you don't like it, but what are the things that other people see in you that are fucking fly and you're learning how to embrace or enjoy about yourself that you're moving into?
Power, right? This freedom to be who I am, like,
Mm,
or people looking up to me in a way like they think it's unattainable. Like, it's the power piece. Like, wearing that has been different for me,
it's
or
super uncomfortable.
it is.
Yeah, like I've had people over the last, year in random well, I look up to you, or you're my mentor. And I'm like, even then you saw how I like kind of pause to say that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So what power piece is it that you've identified?
What do you mean?
The power piece, I'm saying that maybe mine's in business and people seeing how I move and they appreciate the autonomy and my honesty and my two fucks that I give. What is that power piece that you've identified that the thing that you are having to learn how to embrace?
It's probably all of it,
Yeah.
right? Because I think I've moved in this last few months to kind of myself. I had somebody reach out to me on Facebook the other day. She actually lives here in Houston and she's actually a part of our social club. And I'm very active in that group. And she says, "Hey, I want to learn from you. I want to get as good as you in this space." And I'm like, "Who is this lady? I don't even know who she is." And I told her, I was like, "Oh, I'll be in your town this weekend with my family." And it was this weird, like, "Oh my gosh, can I just meet you? Even if it's for 5 minutes, I want to get as good as you one of these days." And it was really just kind of this very awkward feeling for me because I'm just like you. Like, I don't see
Mhm.
myself as
Yeah.
I put my leg pants and then or I put my dress on. Like, I don't
Yeah.
see it's weird for me. Those things are weird for
It's
me.
weird. And I'm learning that if I don't embrace it and embrace it quickly, I block other people's blessings, especially in my avenues, because I work with teams and other creatives. And what I'm doing is this, right? And if I'm not comfortable doing this, it comes across on camera. It comes
Mm,
across when people see me. I'm not selling what we're doing because they're like, oh, well, she seems great on camera, but she's awkward, or I never get a chance to get to the camera because I'm fidgeting or uncomfortable. So even as I'm uncomfortable, it's like I know what to do and I know who I am and I know how it's supposed to be done. And I also know it's only supposed to be done exactly how I am supposed to do it. And it's this counterbalance because at the same time, I'm like, what the fuck? This is
Well, that's funny you say that. I have, a coach that has asked to bring me on as a coach to come and co-create,
yeah.
like, with her
Uh-huh.
community, and she coaches women that are 6, 7, and 8-figure earners. I want you to come in and teach X, Y, and Z. And I've had this weird, like, going back and forth, and I haven't been able to figure out, which I need to get through really quickly if I'm gonna either do this or not. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it that it's not in alignment with me, or is there some fear creeping up on the background of
Mm,
maybe like it's one thing to like be studying and starting to teach. Like, I teach a lot of people one-on-one how to
mm-hmm.
invest. I like teach a lot of people one-on-one some of these strategies that I've learned, small groups, but to be on a platform in that space, it can be a little intimidating, right? That piece.
That piece. Ooh,
That
okay.
piece. So, yeah, now that you say that, like, that
That's the
has
thing. It's the good ego and the bad ego because some of it is like do I really like the high impact of like micro events and small things, or is it or am I like fearful and scared of the big things, and then why am I fearful and scared of them? Am I saying that I lean into myself and I don't lean in as hard as I
Mhm.
could? Like all of those things, and it's definitely a play. So as we're wrapping up, what is something that you want people to just know about you?
That I'm one of the most down to earth people that you'll ever meet. I really truly want everyone to live a life of alignment, joy. This life is a beautiful life. Um, Not to be bogged down by negativity or negative things. Um, and don't spend your life doing things that you absolutely hate.
Mhm.
Make change today. If that sounds like anything that, but those are things that,
Yeah.
like, if I'm around you, I'm gonna shift you and I'm gonna have conversations enough with you in my hope that I can help you shift the way you think
Mhm.
in terms about how you live your life.
Yeah, yeah. And in a time where everybody's selling that, it's good to just know that there's people that are just doing it, right? Because I think that that's something that can't be so like sold, but
Mhm.
shown and then fostered and supported, right? I appreciate that. Yeah. Season 4, LaRae Infinity, Let's Talk podcast, the dynamics of women. So right now for you, when you think of the dynamics of women, what are the dynamics of women for you right now? Like, what do you see?
Well, I've chosen to surround myself with some amazing women, right? Um, I believe that the dynamics of women that I've chosen to center myself around are amazing. I feel like it's this goddess council of beautiful, powerful women that all have these strengths, right? But all while leading each other, and lifting each other all the way up. Like, I truly see us as superheroes, and the dynamics can be like what my friend group has and the dynamics of the group that I choose to surround myself with. It's none like any other, and I
Mhm.
think that what I've seen happen is that when those dynamics are in flow, there's some really amazing fucking things that can happen from it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, y'all. Another one of these whirlwind journeys and celebrations of, women and everything that we are ebbing and flowing. Thank you for being on the show and traveling. You are one of my traveling guests this season. And I'll tell you, it was super nerve wracking. And it was a long time coming to get to season 4. So I'm glad it's purposeful. I believe it was supposed to be right now. And it waited and waited and waited. And here we are. So that's super exciting. Thank you everybody for rocking. If and because I know you love this episode, like it, comment below, subscribe so that you can make sure you hear and are notified of all the episode drops, and share, talk about it. Because these are some amazing stories by amazing women, and we need to hear more of them. The funny, the ebb, the flow, all these people that give two fucks, now you know, walking around, what some of women in their 40s and above are really, really thinking. And you know how it goes is you are moving through the world, as you're figuring out how you're going to make your money work for you, as you are understanding how people move and what's going on in the world. Make sure that you are kind to yourself. And as always, tell your story. Be your own brand, live your truth, and stand in your moment.
Hey, LaGina, thank you so much for having me today.
My pleasure.
It has been great spending time with you today. It is always a pleasure to travel to the cosmos with you because I always feel like we float out of the universe when we're in the same room.
We do.
So thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure driving down to Houston.
Yeah.
And thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Y'all, my name is Marisol. I am 45 years old. I hope that y'all learn how to live your best life and alignment, and that you live a life full of bliss. You just listen to my story as I live my truth and stand in my moment on the LaRae Infinity Let's Talk podcast, season 4, The Dynamics of Women. Peace out.
All right, y'all. Peace until next time. One love. Bye.